This is part 3 of our oral history with Mr. Steve Melnikoff. Today is Saturday, August 15th, 2009. Steve, we've just, you were evacuated, you were operated on, you recovered, and were sent back to meet up again with the troops. Now, the sights and sounds of a battlefield, particularly what you recall from Hill 108. And another question I had, did the battles go on at night? Did they go on after dark?
No, pretty much there was not much going on. Once in a while, not at this time, but pretty much you became static at night, unless sometimes the Germans might, come and fire something, mortar at you or something like that. But beyond that, there would be, no, it was true. I never encountered anything like it at night.
If you were to describe what it sounded like on the battlefield, what are the sounds that you hear? What do you hear constantly? What is it like when it's going?
Well, in the Hedgerow country, what you'd hear would be mainly the machine guns and the automatic pistols that they had, and that was a scary sound because it was very rapid fire, and they would throw bursts at you, and this is mainly what it was. And I didn't experience, like, the next day, I think they probably experienced more mortar fire and shelling because I think they probably were worried, but I didn't experience much of that. I think on the 18th and the 19th, there was more battling going on. That it was pretty much as intense as it was on the 17th.
It's important to know also this action that you were a part of resulted in what happening to the unit, and eventually what kind of honors did the unit receive for that?
Right. Well, let me say this. On the 16th, we lost a number of men on the 16th, but then on the 17th, the company, I'm only talking about the company of well, maybe even the platoon war, we lost a lot of men. And for instance, we lost the lieutenant in the 3rd platoon. We lost the tech sergeant, who was the second in command of the 3rd platoon. Bill Doyle had to take over. We lost a number of sergeants, and we probably, in that company, we probably lost about 20 men, give or take, on the 17th. And then on the 18th, the same kind of and I wasn't aware at the time, but I didn't realize that when we were in Hill 108, C Company was the lead company. I didn't realize that. And nor did I realize that the 3rd platoon was one of the lead platoons going right up the middle of Hill 108. I didn't know that at the time, but I know it now. And so we received really a good bunch of casualties. And according to Bill Doyle, and I hope he said the same thing, he told me that by the 19th, when they were relieved by B Company, there were only 7 men left in the platoon. Mm. So we were pretty much without sergeants, with exception of Bill, and he even said that they were starting to send in replacements at night to try to help out. But the original guys, there was only 7 left. So another fellow was injured on the 18th was Bill Douglas, who also lives in this area. He was a staff sergeant also at the time, and so we lost a good bit of the so-called leaders of the company and the platoons at that time.
The presidential unit citation.
Well,
what happened? How did that all go?
Well, I guess I don't know, but as I see it, what happened is we sort of led the charge, and it was the first. It was only the 1st Battalion that got the Presidential Unit Citation, not the 175th Regiment, just the battalion got it. But we were the lead on the, say, the when it would start on the 14th or 15th or 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, we were on a lead till we were so decimated that on the 18th, the B Company went ahead and advanced past the truce, and even they were, according to Bill, and when the attack came, they came back and reformed on the line where we were holding on the 18th. So that the fact that so many men were probably killed and injured, and even though Joe Balkowski says that there wasn't the deepest penetration, but it was the deepest penetration probably towards St. Lo, you know, at the time, so that we had a, it was like a thing sticking out like that with just a C Company around like that, and then the other regiments on the sides, and so that, or the other battalions. So I guess because of all the casualties and the fact that we made that deep penetration, then
it's quite an honor. It really reflects the intensity of the battle and what happened there those days.
And how many people were hurt. Like they say, the regiment had 600 casualties and 300, I think, in the 1st Battalion, some number like that, which is was a large number.
You rejoined the unit at Veer.
Yes.
And did you say you were trucked back to back over there? Were you with other guys who were going back to the same unit?
Yeah. I was with others, and you always went back. Seemed like you always went back, and when you went back, you just sort of went to your same squad, and if you were a sergeant, you took over, and if there was 2 sergeants with the same rank, then the senior, he would take over, and the other guy would just be an extra sergeant, if that would happen that way, or they would assign him temporarily to a different squad or a different platoon. You went back. I understand the Germans didn't do that, but we did that. I always went back. I went back the second time, and just the same way, right back to the same company, same platoon.
Your rank at the time?
I was a private all this time I was a private, and as I will tell you this, it's sometime between the 5th of August and the 29th of August, because on the 29th of August there was a item in one of the orders that they printed out. They listed me as a sergeant, and so that sometime between the 5th and when they pulled us out of line to go to Brest, I probably was advanced to a rank of sergeant. And as I recall, there was only 12 of us left, and some lieutenant, don't know his name, told me that, Melnikoff, you're in charge of this platoon. That's all it was, 12 people in a platoon. Or it might have been 12 and me, I can't remember that clearly. And then we were taken off the line sometime about the middle of August, and we were trucked to Brest.
So,
towards Brest, not at, it was into Brittany, and then we were...
Into Brittany.
We were told our next target was Brest. Yeah.
So now, you've gone from being a private, wounded in action, you're back, now you're a sergeant.
Yes, I have a squad.
And you got a squad under you.
Eventually, when we got our replacements, when we were going into towards Brest, they replaced, and I was then I had a squad. Yeah.
And you had a squad. So now you're the man in charge.
Yeah.
You're what's going on in Veer? What's happening there?
Well, at Veer, I don't recall too much of Veer because I believe the 115th was given a mission of taking that hill in Veer. It was on a hill, and we were probably off to the right flank or something like that. But I don't recall being in too much of a battle. A lot of times now, I have little recollection of the density of fighting, or was minimal fighting, because sometimes your company's pulled back in reserve, or your battalion's in reserve. And I don't recall those kind of things. But I don't remember too much of that period either, except the fact that I found out I was a sergeant.
You still staying outside? You still in foxholes? You
Oh,
still
yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, sometimes if you're fortunate, there's a barn but not very often, most of the time. The one thing I always did is, I always ordered, I was already 5 foot, I always claimed I was 5'9", but I always got a large raincoat, because that's the only thing you had for cover.
Mm-hmm.
I always got a large raincoat. Guys used to wonder why you didn't fit me good, but that's all you had to cover yourself up in rain or when you're sleeping. You didn't have anything else.
By the way, how was the rain during that time?
The weather wasn't too bad,
mm-hmm.
and no, I think the weather was fairly good. Yeah, mm-hmm. I don't recall it being too much because it was, it was summertime, and it wasn't too bad. Yeah.
When you're in the front line, so and again, I want to take you just back for a minute before you were wounded on Hill 108. As you're moving along. When you stop and you dig a foxhole overnight, you're eating rations overnight? How do you eat? How do they feed you?
Well, the cooks, they had a mm-hmm. couple of cooks and probably helpers, and they would either send up, you had K rations that was in like a paper box where it was like a Cracker Jack box almost, where you had a little can of meat or cheese and a couple of cookies and a couple of cigarettes and a bar of candy, and that was your one meal. You had sometimes it would be meat in the can or cheese, a little can about that big, and so you'd have that, and then sometimes you had the next grade was C rations, and that was. There would be cans of, it could be beef stew or something, and somebody would cook it up, or the cooks would cook it up and just, bring it up to you, or get it up to you somehow, or sometimes you did it yourself. And a lot of times you just ate it cold, you just opened up the can, and you had a little can opener, a little bitty thing about that big, was a can opener that you could open up the cans, and if you had a cigarette lighter, you could heat it up a little bit, or else you ate it cold. There was no fancy hotels. No, you're dug in. How deep is a foxhole? Well, you'd like to have it about this deep, but sometimes you only have time to get it this way. Sometimes you get to a place that's rocky or it's very clay soil. You have a hell of a time digging,
Yeah, you gotta dig. What equipment do you have to dig?
They had like a shovel that you could adjust to make it like a hoe, mm-hmm. and you could straighten it out for shoveling, and you had a hoe like that where you could sort of bang and soften it up to dirt. So that's what you had, and you always carried that, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people they'd give a pick to, but they would get rid of that real quick because there was no, you. And the other thing, if you didn't have that, you used your helmet. The helmet used for all kinds of things. Sit on, wash in. Helmet.
You dig.
Take the liner out, right?
Yeah,
you got a steel helmet, you wash in a helmet, or you have to dig a foxhole, everything else, you take the helmet, steel part of it, and dig with that. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. And you had a place to sit, you sat on it.
Yeah.
With the open part, you sat on it just like that.
You're, yeah, wow. So that's, and I'm gonna another obvious question. You're out in combat. What about restroom facilities? You have to you got to find a latrine somewhere for yourself, right? It's nature.
One thing I always carried is whenever you had a place where there's adequate toilet paper, in the helmet liner they had a like a suspended system, mm-hmm. and above it you had like about an inch of room. Mm-hmm. So up there, you carried a woolen hat. It was like a little woolen hat, had a little bit of a bib up front, mm-hmm. and you could pull it down over your ears. You carried that up there and toilet paper up there. Why? Keeps it dry, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever you had a chance to get toilet paper, you always took extra and you put it up there for emergency.
Smart.
Well,
It makes sense.
GIs, you have to adapt. That's what you did, yeah.
Yeah, they would adapt. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Communications. Back to when you were getting communications. Did they have how'd you talk back to the lines, back to the commanders, back to the battalion commanders?
It's word of mouth. I think that probably probably Bill Doyle or the tech sergeant had a little hand radio, and most of the times they were, you know, I don't know how well they worked, but we just word of mouth. The guy next to you tell you, well, we're moving out. We're moving out. You pass it right out down the line. We're attacking, whatever. You just back and forth like that. We had no. The communications were, there was no. They had a. I think just that maybe the company commander had a big radio that somebody carried on his back, but the platoons, I don't know that they had anything.
Yeah. General Gerhardt was the general of the 29th. Yeah. Did you see him much?
I don't recall if we saw him in combat. We probably saw him at different parades, you know, in England, maybe. Combat, I don't remember seeing him. The Whitefoot family asked me if I knew what knew their father. I don't remember seeing him, you know. Mm-hmm. You don't get back to regimental or battalion headquarters. I was one time I went back to regimental at headquarters in my career in combat. You don't see those people around. Just a guy like, you might see a colonel once in a while, like, you know, he might come by. Somehow you might see him drive by in a Jeep or something, but you know. Yeah.
How unusual was it for somebody like General Coda to be right up there with you?
That's very unusual. In fact, they didn't like it. The top men didn't like that because they're afraid he'd get hurt. And they finally made him a general, full general. Not a full general, but, you know, a 2-star or whatever, and he gave him a division.
Yeah.
It wasn't long after Normandy or St. Lo, he became a general of some other division. I don't know which one. Excuse me.
He was quite a general, wasn't he? He was quite a leader from what I heard.
Yeah, he was, you know, like they call well, just like in real life, you have people that get along with people, and then you got other people that kind of standoffish and stuff. There was even a clique between the regular officers and the West Point officers, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a West Point officer was better than a guy that moved up from, you know, 60-day wonders we call them, but you know, but the West Pointers always was supposed to be the big deal. Like Patton was a West Pointer, you know.
Yeah.
Eisenhower, I think Eisenhower was the bottom of his class, but he's still a West Pointer.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really a good thing to hear about General Coda. I mean, you know, he's quite a guy.
See, I didn't see him on D-Day because but I did see him in that action. There's no question. I saw him, and very close, right by, right with us, and he was there, and the lieutenant would be there with us, you know. Yeah, and there's no saluting going on. You don't hear any more sirs and all that kind of stuff. You don't hear that kind of talk. The Germans would hear that also, you know. So you know, they would hide all their bars and stuff and ranks. They don't want that to show.
A lot of lieutenants come and go.
Yes.
They go.
I should be guilty, but I can only remember lieutenants. Like this one guy was really out of shape and about 6'2" and kind of sloppy, and this other guy was a little guy, shorter than me, and he was a good foxhole digger, and that I remember that way, you know, just by what they looked like. But the names I can't put a name on them anymore. I'm sure I knew their names, you know, when they were with us, you know. But later, other than that, I can't. No. And I'm sure we had numerous lieutenants. In fact, I have the daily reports, and by the time we got through June, the whole staff was all new.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I've got the reports. Did Bill Doe show you them too?
Haven't seen them. I think you guys have done that subsequently to when I talked to them. That's
yeah.
You're when you get to Veer. What's Veer like? Does it look then the area of Veer? Is it still the hedgerow country?
It's still pretty much, yeah. It was still pretty much hedgerow. Even in Normandy, it was not Normandy. Even in Brittany, there was some semblance of hedges. It was their way of, you know, of making walls. Like in New England, you had stone walls. Okay. Down south, they didn't have many stones, so they made them out of logs or sticks, whatever. You know. In New England, it's stones that they picked out of the fields and made walls out of them. Yeah. So it was pretty much, I think it was a little more open by there, but not a heck of a lot more.
Now, Veer, what's the objective in Veer? Why do you have to take Veer? What do you learn about? What do you know about it? Anything?
No, I couldn't tell you anything about there, but I just think it was, they're going south and they're trying to just take more land, and because they didn't have that much past, and they're just you know, they're just sort of like widening the whole thing. But I would know, I wasn't there.
So when you meet up with them again in Veer in August, they've already taken Veer.
No, they were in the process of taking it.
Process of taking it.
Yeah.
And what do? You're back in combat then.
Yep, I'm in combat. I don't remember too much of the combat in that area at all. I just know that the only thing I know is that the company was, the platoon was getting depleted, and beyond that, I don't know too much. See, I was only there from Veer probably 10 days before they pulled us out of line. Pulled us out of line and sent us to Brittany. But the middle of August, I think.
When you say pull out of line, what does that mean?
Well, what happens is, as you go in battle, you have 175th and 116th attacking. 115th is in reserve. After a while, maybe the 175th side getting beat up, he'll take the 115 and move them up and take their place. Now, it's very rarely do they all attack at the same time because you'd have no backup if something happened, you know. And they probably, it just take, like, you probably don't hear too much of 116th after D-Day for a while because there was nobody left, not many left. So 175th and 115 were taken over. And 116 probably had a lesser role with a small area, you know, to do. Well, that's the way they do. Once the generals and they check us, you know, they go up. And same thing happened with companies. If, like when C Company got all battered up on the 18th of June, B Company then was sent in. They went through C Company and then assumed the position beyond. And then when they attacked, they had to pull back, and C Company and B Company were fighting together in the same line. They pushed them back.
When they pull you out of line outside of Veer or after Veer has been taken, they're then sending you to Brittany.
Yeah,
towards Brest.
Yeah, they took us in trucks.
Okay.
And drove us over to someplace in Brittany where we, you know, there was a mission was to take Brest.
What's that mission all about? Do you know what it's all about, or is it just
well? All I know about that mission was that, and this I learned later on, was Brest is a seaport, and it's a submarine repairing place, and a submarine. What do they call those? Where they have them in under fortified so the bombers can't get to them, where they repair them and the men can sleep and they can refit them and resupply them, all like that. And it's a seaport. And they thought that they would use that as a seaport. But by the time they took it, it was so beat up, and the Germans kind of beat it up, just like they beat up Le Havre. They wrecked Le Havre, and they still had to use the Omaha Beach because it took them months to repair it. And so they found another seaport a little bit further up the coast that they used that was not, you know, was not as beat up, and used that. And eventually, they never did use Brest as much of an entry for supplies at all. So sometimes, you know, they're not perfect with their plannings, you know.
Tell me about what actually took place, what you took part in the Brest campaign. What did you remember about that?
Brest, we found out at Brest, what I'll say very gently, not too much I'm going to tell you about it, but I was injured on the 14th, okay?
14th of September?
14th of September.
Okay.
And there it was still hedgerow and sunken roads. And what I can remember about Brest, when we first got there, it was very a disorganized place where there was no definite lines. I can remember one day seeing Germans practically march in front of our position at night. They didn't see us and we didn't see them. It was too late, and they were gone before we worked to the fact that they were there. It was kind of a messed up area for a while. And there was a lot of hard fighting because the French had built a lot of forts in that area of Brittany from way back. And the Germans were utilizing those forts as strong points. And we had to knock out each strong point as we went along. And they even had what looked like man-made hills there that were fortified, and so we had different hills we had to take, and they had a very great superiority in artillery. And I'm telling you this, I swear to God, this is true. The artillery was so large that I can remember seeing shells going over my head. I can remember seeing shells going over my head. Big shells. Because it was a coastal place where they had, you know, probably had 8-inch guns or something, whatever. I don't know what they were. I don't know what the size of them, but I can remember seeing that. And they had a lot of artillery, and paratroops. They had very good troops there too. And so it was again a battle. It was less hedgerows, but just a lot of fighting, and I eventually was hit by on the 14th. I think it was 2 or 3 days before they captured it, so I missed out on that, but that's okay. And again, I was evacuated by air, and I can remember when I flew by, I saw Mount Michel.
Did you really?
Yeah, from the air.
You saw that from the air?
Yeah. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I guess the pilot probably told us or somebody.
It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, we saw it from the air.
Now, if you can, the wound you sustained, what was that from?
Yeah. Well, it was from a shelling, and I was hit, and I have steel still to this day on my right shoulder over here. They said it was better to leave it in there and take it out. And then I had a whole bunch of small fragments in my back that they kind of picked out all over my back.
All right. Let me ask you a couple of things. You are a platoon sergeant at this point, right?
No. I'm just a buck sergeant, squad sergeant.
Squad sergeant.
Just a squad sergeant.
Okay, you're a squad sergeant.
Yeah,
Thank you for correcting it.
Yeah.
So as a squad sergeant, you're reporting to a higher sergeant and moving them along. And at this point there, when you were wounded with the shrapnel, that means that they're firing mortars or they're firing...
Yes.
It's pretty intense, I would imagine, at some point.
Well, we had to fight for like hills, different hills, and it was on the backside of a hill that I got it on. And one thing I can remember, it might have been the day before, one of my men was hit, and he lost, well, his hand was indistinguishable, and I'm bad with blood. I never would have made a doctor or a nurse, and I had to take and bandage that up. I couldn't do that under ordinary circumstances, but I bandaged up his wound.